Hey, good afternoon. I guess if you're on the East Coast, and good morning for those of you on the West Coast. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute. Give a few folks an opportunity to join the call. Thank you. All right, welcome to the April version of the Rapid Scale Educational Series. This one's titled Reshaping the Modern Enterprise Network. We're going to focus heavily on SD-WAN in the marketplace. This is Bob Buchanan. I am the EVP of Sales and Marketing at Rapid Scale, and very excited to have Dylan Bowders join me. Dylan, I'm assuming you are out there and on the call, but can you introduce yourself and maybe give us a little bit of your background?
Hello, yeah, thanks, Bob. Dylan Bowders here, a solutions engineer with Rapid Scale. I've had about 5 years in the industry as a pre-sales engineer, a little over a year with Rapid Scale, and about 15 years prior to that as an actual engineer. So happy to be on the phone here and help add some color in the discussion around SD-WAN.
Man, we appreciate it. Thank you. So let's jump into it, right? So before we do that, I'll just remind everybody, these sessions are recorded. We do send out the deck to everyone who registered for the session. We tend to keep these no longer than 30 minutes. We know everyone on the call is very busy. We're just hopeful that you maybe walk away thinking, you know what, Rapid Scale is a company that I can grow with and expand my partnership because they can help me solve some of these needs. And what we're going to be talking about today, I think everyone will agree. Definitely hot topics and trends in the marketplace. So I'm assuming that the vast majority of the folks on this call are very familiar with us. You might be a customer, you might be a prospect. If you're a customer, perhaps you're only leveraging one service, maybe two. So I just pause and say, who are we, right? So just think of us as a managed global cloud service provider, delivering fully managed and what we would classify as hybrid managed cloud solutions to both the SMB and the enterprise market. And when we think about hybrid solutions and managed, the context there, folks, is are we fully managing up the technology stack into the application, or is it more of a hybrid approach? And we really think of ourselves as a cloud provider providing infrastructure as a service, DaaS, desktop as a service, but doing it in a very MSP-like manner, where we're taking first call support and giving white glove service to our clients. So I mentioned global footprint and really quickly, right? So domestically, Sterling, Virginia, Dallas, Texas, Irvine, California, 3 global US platforms. I apologize there. Our 4th US data center is coming online in May. That'll be in Seattle, Washington. And then we do have international presence. You see in Amsterdam, and then Asia Pac out of Hong Kong. These facilities are interconnected via 10 gig waves. This is our network that we manage, and everything's got backed by a fully redundant mesh out to the internet. So again, the purpose of this discussion today with Dylan is certainly not to get into our entire portfolio, but I just want to set the foundation here. Desktop as a service. And the outsourced desktop market is accelerating. Infrastructure as a service, your servers, our platform, being able to scale and grow on demand as your business dictates. Disaster recovery as a service, business continuance and ensuring that you're mitigating risk by securing and replicating your most precious applications, business applications, to an environment that can be restored very, very quickly. And then obviously Exchange and managed hosted email is a pillar, along with backup. And you'll notice security is huge. SD-WAN and DaaS play into that piece. And then obviously the SD-WAN component is what we'll talk about in greater detail. Before we jump into our service and how we're going to market specifically, I think it's always good to talk for a few moments about what's happening in the broader marketplace. There is a massive amount of digital disruption that is actually occurring, which is changing the nature of applications and how they're being accessed by both your internal employees and your customers. I think that's call me Captain Obvious. That's pretty self-evident if you're paying attention to what's happening today in the technology space. I won't waste your time reading off each one of these statistics, but the thing that I think really that needs to be emphasized here is the average business, and this is a dated stat in 2016, somewhat dated. The average business was leveraging 13 different cloud applications, and really what that's telling us is this marketplace is not a hey, you build it and they will come. It's here. Organizations are moving to this sector, and they're moving now. So the SD-WAN is taking advantage of that disruption, right? So the disruptions caused by the transformation of digital business models are driving adoption of SD-WAN at a pace that it's unheard of. That's Gartner stat, and really what does that actually mean? If you think about a 2017 statistic was, hey, 1% of enterprises using SD-WAN in all of their branches. So 1% of all enterprises had SD-WAN in all their branches, predicting by 2019, that number will be 30%. That's pretty phenomenal growth. The worldwide market for SD-WAN is expected to grow over $6 billion by 2020. That's a 90% acceleration, pretty phenomenal. So what are the advantages? Why SD-WAN? And Dylan, this is where I kind of turn to you and say, what's actually happening, broader market? Maybe what you're seeing is legacy networks. Why does SD-WAN become a viable solution?
Thanks, Bob. Well, a lot of it comes down to the specific customer, but we talk about more broad strokes in general terms. A lot of companies that kind of struggle with managing a single internet provider and the resiliency that brings, or pushing applications to the cloud and having reliable delivery of those applications down to the disparate offices that the employees reside in. That becomes a challenge, and there's technology that can obviously solve that. I mean, that's why we're on the phone today. But it's not as simple as just saying, well, let me just drop in a firewall and load balance 2 internet connections, or try and take advantage of 2 internet connections. It's a bit more complicated that when you pull back the covers. But at the surface, SD-WAN, being able to implement that in multiple branch offices, and then bring that into a service provider like RapidScale, where we are delivering those applications, results in a much more reliable and a much more resilient scenario.
So 2 things I heard you say that really stuck out, right? It's almost like I guess it maps into that whole disruption theme, Dylan. What I'm hearing is, hey, I've got disparate workers who may be working in, rather than working in just the 4 walls of my office building, they're enabled. They're working from home, they're working from the coffee shop, other locations, their customer site. So that's putting stress on the organization, as well as the worker who is accessing kind of multiple platforms, multiple clouds, multiple infrastructure ecosystems where data and applications reside.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when I think about us, we chose, right? Think about, before I say that, let me back up, right? So SD-WAN, thinking about the marketplace, who are the players out there that you're traditionally seeing? What we see is the telco guys that are saying, hey, you know what, my traditional MPLS services and products are feeling significant compression. I need to make sure that I minimize churn, keep my customers happy, so I'm going to have an SD-WAN solution that likely is powered by VeloCloud, which obviously got acquired by VMware. Then you see, I think, the big box hardware guys. Cisco comes to mind, Silver Peak, among others. Those can be very expensive. Often the service for the customer is going to have to manage that and have the talent to manage it themselves. And then I look at like what I would classify as, I don't want to say they're all startups, but the early stage companies, maybe you know, an Ariaka, a Talari, these companies come to mind. We chose to go with Citrix, but I think it's in the middle piece there, and there's some reasoning behind that. We are a very large Citrix CSP. We deploy Citrix Zen Desktop for our cloud customers, Zen app as well, and then obviously Citrix NetScaler for SD-WAN. I'll note that we were the top innovator for enablement and growth in 2016, recognized by Citrix, which we're really proud of. And just a couple stats here about the SD-WAN and DAS marketplace, again, combined market growth. These are markets that are not going away. Organizations are looking to consume IT differently. They're looking, the traditional IT models were, let me CapEx everything, let me do it myself. Now, especially in the mid-market into the small business market, you're seeing accelerated pace of how do I consume IT on demand and as a utility, and really get this infrastructure into a third-party provider that I can grow with. So our product, our model, right? We're thinking about it's productized, we deploy it, it's all, as I mentioned, on the Citrix NetScaler appliance. It's managed exclusively by RapidScale. But Dylan, when you mentioned here in our marketing collateral, we tout high performance. NetScaler SD-WAN increases performance and reliability of traditional enterprise applications, SaaS applications, and virtual desktops over any network. I'm thinking at the application layer, layer 7. Why is that important?
Well, it's super important because I presume we're speaking about line of business applications and delivering a worker's daily tool for doing their job in a more reliable fashion, but also in a higher performance fashion. And to kind of speak to your point for why we went with NetScaler, given the fact that we are a strong Citrix shop for application delivery with either Zen app or Zen desktop. The products work very well together. They're designed to work very well together. And one thing that we can do with our desktop delivery or application delivery is it actually accelerates using WAN optimization. We can actually accelerate that with the NetScaler SD-WAN product. But also, given the fact that we're leveraging not only resilient internet connectivity in our data centers for ingress and egress data, but also at the customer location, we presumably would be using 2 or more internet connections. And with that, we're able to use the connection that's most reliable. So think about you buy something from Amazon, and I actually posted this on LinkedIn today. You buy something from Amazon. Amazon says, you know what, I'm going to send this package twice. Since you signed up for priority delivery, I'm going to send this package twice. I'm going to send it once with FedEx and once with UPS. Whichever one gets to you first is the one you can use. The other one we'll just discard. Don't worry about it. And ultimately, that's going to get there not only more reliably, but over the fastest connection possible. We're also going to use that WAN op feature to deliver it even faster.
Dylan, that's great. I have a question for you that comes to mind. When I think about an advantage that we have running our own global platform, having these devices managed by us, where would the controllers go? Do they go at the customer site? Do we hosting those in our data centers? What's the best practice?
So typically, we're going to put what's called the master control node, which is really the brains of the SD-WAN solution, regardless of how many offices. We're going to put that MCN or master control node in our cloud environment. It's a virtual instance. So we're going to take advantage of our highly available infrastructure built on NetApp, Cisco UCS, on top of VMware, and we're going to put those virtual master control nodes in our cloud. That's ultimately controlling kind of like a puppet, controlling those end devices that are at the customer location. So it's a virtual appliance on our side. We usually will recommend deploying 2 of those, again, for resiliency's sake. And then at the end locations, we're going to have typically physical appliances that are aggregating those internet connections.
Thanks, but I've moved on to the next slide here. I'm sure you can see, but one of the things I think we get asked a lot is, hey, what happens at on-premise? Do I need a network device? Do I need a firewall? Do I need a switch? With a NetScaler solution, how does that work?
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this particular platform is that it's very flexible. So there's no one answer to that. It really depends on the customer's network, the currently deployed devices, maybe an existing investment and some kind of a firewall device that may be on premises. So we're very flexible in how that gets installed. It can be in a kind of more of a passive mode. It can be inside the firewall, outside the firewall. Ultimately, we're going to be deploying that in what makes the most sense with a discovery call and an engineering and architecture discussion around how best to deploy that. Then it's possible that at one office it's deployed one way, in another office it's deployed another way. So we want to do that homework up front so that when we go to pre-configure those physical appliances and put them on premises, we're able to do that in those different scenarios.
How easy is it for us to deploy an SD-WAN solution? If the average size, let's think about a 10 location branch, and we're deploying appliances out to each one of those locations. From the time that we have done discovery, the customer says go. What's that look like?
I would say we're probably looking at a 45 to 60-day window, and that's going to include those discovery conversations, architecture conversations, kind of getting into the weeds about what specific hardware is at what locations and how it's configured at each of those locations, and pre-configuring the devices and then shipping them out. And larger deployments, we'll have engineers that will actually go on site to help and assist with those deployments. But in most cases, that's not needed. And again, those end devices, while there's a lot of intelligence built into them, there's not a lot of configuration that's done specifically on that device because it's all done and templatized from that master control node.
That's great. I talked a little bit about the Citrix relationship and RapidScale being a Citrix-powered CSP, and obviously we lead with one of our core really technology practices is on Citrix DAS and the ability to support Zen Desktop. Talk to me about some of the synergies that might exist between Zen Desktop and Citrix NetScaler and implementing SD-WAN. I think about application performance improvement, which I think you've touched on. I also think about security. Maybe you can go a little bit deeper and help the audience understand why is the synergy there so important?
Yeah, and yeah, we've definitely touched on several of those things kind of individually through this webinar. But again, when we put the two products together, and they obviously have been developed with deployment of both in mind, the ability to do WAN optimization for those specific protocols, and out of the box, we're not going to be doing WAN optimization for things like SMB, which would be like file shares and things of that sort. But in a perfect world, we're controlling all of that inside of our isolated cloud environment anyway, within our desktop as a service application, and then delivering that from the SD-WAN appliance, from the master control node, from our cloud, as reliably as possible over multiple WAN connections into the end office, but also using that WAN optimization to deliver it faster into that end location as well. And because the SD-WAN appliance is aware of those applications and those specific packets, we're able to very easily identify and then more rapidly and resiliently deliver those applications.
Yeah, that's perfect. This diagram actually, it's very simplistic, but I think it really kind of wraps up about what's actually happening. And if you look at the typical organization today, having each individual connected to on average 3 devices, right? And a lot of those are bring your own device, BYOD, working out of multiple locations on average, 3 to 4, accessing different applications, whether those be inside your 4 walls or external to the cloud and cloud infrastructure. You're getting into a very heterogeneous environment where data is residing, hopefully within the governance of the corporate environment, but often it's not. Often, unfortunately, it's outside those 4 walls. So what RapidScale, I think, is really part of the value proposition beyond just saying, hey, we're a desktop shop or we're an infrastructure shop or you can come to us for SD-WAN solutions. When you take our product set and we come back to that customer with a solution, what you're actually have the ability to do is create what I like to refer to as a digital perimeter. And in this, obviously very disruptive, again, world that we're living in with disparate employees accessing multiple systems from multiple devices, risk is greater than ever before. And how do you apply that level of governance? How do you have single point of control? How do you maintain the integrity of your corporate data and really mitigate any type of risk? The Target, Equifax, all these things are happening. They make the big news, but having your individual employees accessing data or placing corporate data inside untrusted environments or platforms or accessing corporate data over untrusted networks, I mean, that's where, in my mind, the real risks exist, and I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, and I think this diagram here does a really good job of trying at least to paint a picture of some of the efficiencies that come with taking your company's data, isolating it into a secure environment like a RapidScale DAS solution, and then being able to, because we're aggregating all of that data and the delivery of the application over, say, an SD-WAN solution like NetScaler's SD-WAN and what we put together with our desktop as a service. You take traditional IT that was grown up in managing all of these endpoints and having to control everything that's securing the company's data, and maybe it's in multiple locations, and then what's my business continuity and disaster recovery plan, because I'm having to maintain a generator and having to maintain the air conditioning and redundant air conditioning within the facility, and that traditional IT gets so much simpler, and the costs go down so much more significantly when it comes to FTE and being able to focus your IT employees on line of business applications because of this big picture solution that we're now able to put together when it comes to putting all of the applications in a secure environment, as you mentioned, having the governance around that, having the security around that, being able to control and provide auditing much simpler. It's a very compelling story, and to be honest, it's one of the reasons I came to RapidScale, because we can have that big picture story now.
No, that's awesome. And let's talk about a real world example here, right? I mean, I would argue that many of our RapidScale's customers, and certainly I think this is consistent with the marketplace, an organization decides to partner with a service provider. Maybe they stick their toe in the water, right? I think that this particular organization and use case depicts that. Very large, Northeast-based lumber company, really a lumber manufacturer, right? 22 different locations. There are multiple challenges going on here. Just from a backstory, I was somewhat involved in the deal initially, but again, this organization had about, call it 500 employees, looking at 420 desktops. They had a very IBM-centric solution that was in place. It was legacy architecture that was being managed by a third-party MSP. Very, again, limited IT resources internally. I think in totality, they had a team of less than 5. Long story short, they got us involved initially for a complete desktop refresh and outsource of the entire new Citrix environment that would be on our global platform, managed by RapidScale, taking both first call support as well as second call and third call tertiary tier 3 support when necessary. So really a fully managed solution of server environment that's all virtualized into the desktop, as well as some level of application support, and along with a complete Office 365 migration, right? So we take that deal and solve that problem initially, and what comes next is that they started expressing, again, to our account management team, some stress and challenges they were having with their existing MPLS provider. I'll allow you maybe to take it from here and fill in the gaps around how this turned into a really nice SD-WAN deal.
Yeah, and this again just kind of speaks to the the big picture and the full story. They I wouldn't say dip their toes in the water, because making a shift from traditional IT to a complete Office 365 and desktop as a service platform isn't insignificant, but it changes the way the company operates, obviously to the betterment of the company. But once they got into that scenario, they realized that there were some additional things they could do to benefit the company even better, and obviously we were able to step up and do that for them. So with those 22 locations, we're deploying or have deployed SD-WANs, and obviously identifying those desktop protocols, ICA and HDX protocols from Citrix, and we're delivering those now over multiple internet connections at the customer's location. And kind of back to that scenario of Amazon delivering packages over both FedEx and UPS, we're doing that for the desktop as a service, the priority protocols. And then if there's other protocols that maybe aren't as important, then we don't necessarily leverage the double the cost of internet connectivity at the customer's location for those protocols. Those will just go out into the lowest cost connection. So there's a lot of manipulation that we've been able to do for them, and ultimately those pain points, we're continuing to solve them, and not just put band-aids on them, but actually solve them, and putting a forward-looking, future-proof solution in place that is going to last them for a long time to come.
Very good, Dylan. We appreciate it.
Yeah, just one more thing to add there, and I don't know if this has been obvious, but one of the advantages in that scenario with that case study is that they don't have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different providers to call. They're calling RapidScale because we're the ones that are controlling it all. Now, certainly that puts much more focus on us when it comes to having to obviously deliver not only the SD-WAN, delivering the infrastructure, delivering to the desktops, but it gives us the opportunity when there's a problem, because there's going to be problems, that we don't point fingers at other providers. They point fingers at us. We go in and we resolve it, and internally we have a staff and we have a process and we have systems in place to identify, resolve, and then obviously bring it back to the customer. And that meantime to resolution is so much faster when we're able to do that internally, as opposed to having to reach out and pull in 3 or 4 or 5 different providers.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I think that's one of the themes I think we wanted to articulate was, fully managed, hybrid managed. At the end of the day, we can do as much as the customer would like us to do, or we can work with them and really be an extension of their IT team. But also being able to deploy these solutions, especially technology type solutions via Citrix in a consumption-based model, in an OpEx-based model that's fully outsourced. And to your point, managed and supported 365, 24/7. Looking at some questions, I got one that came in through chat, and the question was, does it matter what network provider I choose?
Largely, the answer to that is no, and there's different reasons why I say largely no. But essentially, if you have broadband, we'll be able to accommodate for it. Now, if it's DSL, for instance, DSL comes in over a 2-hour phone line. As long as there's some type of modem that translates that to Ethernet, we're good. If it's cable connection, obviously cable comes in over coax. Coax needs to be translated to some kind of a modem, which goes to Ethernet, and at that point, we're able to accommodate for that. T1s come in. It basically is similar to DSL essentially from a physical medium perspective. That comes in over a TSU, DSU, gets translated to an Ethernet connection. We're accommodating for that. MPLS, same thing. We can go on and on. For the most part, if it is general internet connectivity, and even in some cases we're able to loop in MPLS connectivity as well as leveraging as one of those additional paths to our facility. So that's, again, very flexible. I have yet to see a scenario where we've said, sorry, we can't accommodate for that specific scenario. I'd like to think that, we'll obviously we're going to be doing our best in every scenario when we're scoping these out and architecting the solution to ensure that each location either has what's needed or will advise on what's needed, but we're able to accommodate for practically any scenario.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. That's it for today. Your participation and input here, I'm sure, was appreciated by the audience. It definitely was appreciated by me. We thank you, Dylan. Really appreciate it. So, last comment. we are expanding our account management team at RapidScale, and I'm really excited to welcome Daryl Stitt to the team. Daryl's based out of our Irvine, California office. We have a team that definitely helps us drive business into the company and help our customers and prospects, but we're building out a really solid and strong account management team to help our customers understand not only our products, but really to be there from a business advocate standpoint. Daryl's come on to provide some leadership to that organization, reporting directly into me, and we could be more excited about his addition, and you'll definitely be hearing from him in the future. If you'd like to be proactive and reach out to him, we encourage you to do that as well. And with that, thank you so much for joining us this month, and we'll see you out there on the road. Thanks.